Hey folks, welcome to Sheboygan North Auto and Power Mech. Today I'm going to start out with showing you how to change out the points on an old Tecumseh snowblower engine. Let me show you what I got set up and then we'll get started. I don't know how much memory my phone has for saving recordings, so I'm going to speak quick and hopefully we can capture it all. Okay, so we've got the engine set up. This is an old Tecumseh HS70. There's our points right there. We last left off, we tried to measure the resistance of the secondary coil, and it measured out of limits. Since we've left off, I did take this off in anticipation of replacing it. Found out that the connection between the coil and the laminated core was rusty, so I cleaned that up, and that now is measuring about 7,000 ohms. A little bit higher than I'd like to see, but it's at least measuring now, so that's good. We're going to go ahead and replace the points. I've already put the new condenser on when I did the coil, and I'll show you how we do the points and set the gap. Hopefully the camera footage doesn't give you an issue. Set out some of the tools that I'm going to need up here. I got to cut a wire, some stuff for loosening a plate if I need to 3/4 inch wrench for rotating the engine, a points file and some points feeler gauges, notice they're skinnier, and a couple of screwdrivers and nut drivers. So let me get you set up here on the tripod. I'm going to try to get you the best view I can, but also make sure that I can see what I'm doing. Alright, I'm going to try to talk my way through this too. I'm used to talking to a live audience and not a camera, so we'll see how this goes. I'm going to be off to the side here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get this out of the way. We'll deal with that later. And we're going to get this wire clip up and out of the way. We'll deal with that later. Okay, this is the old set of points here, and this might be hard to see in the video, but there's a little ramp or lobe machined onto the crankshaft. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to where the points are open at their maximum lift at the leading side of the lobe. Okay, because that's where I'm going to check my lift. I'm going to go ahead and set that right away before I take out the old one. I'm going to just use this ratcheting wrench. I just got to go around. So the points are just closed. Okay, we'll slowly bring this around till the follower on the points hits the high spot on the front side of the cam lobe. Whoops. Right about there is where the points should be fully open by now. Maybe a smidge more. Okay, and that's going to be my where I would measure my maximum point gap. We're going to take a screwdriver, we're going to loosen this screw. It's very important to only loosen this screw. Do not loosen these two bolts holding the whole bracket assembly down. If you do that, you have to pull off the cylinder head and get a dial indicator, and you have to retime the engine. Changing the points, as long as I set the gap correctly, doesn't necessarily change the time of the engine. Okay, so pull that out. Cut that off to the side. And then this is kind of jammed in there, but we should be able to just pretty much lift and wiggle that out. Maybe we need a little help. Screwdriver. Push it up out of the slot. There we go. And here's the old points assembly. The whole reason why I'm replacing it is because this is a known wear item. I don't know if you guys even see. Let's see if I can get this to a point where you guys can actually see here. See if we can get it to focus. Here we go. You can see that these points, you can see the light gray area and then the dull gray area. The dull gray area, oops, is where the points were actually touching and tarnishing. I believe we tried to clean them with a file. So you can see they were only touching that one spot. Usually they're black and pitted after a little while, but I believe we tried to clean them, and then we found that the coil measured bad, so we stopped. But since we're this far into it, and these are a known wear item, even though they look like they're not actually as old as the engine and they've been serviced once before, I'm going to go ahead and replace them with a brand new OEM set so I don't have to worry about them again. And hopefully once we get it fixed and running, it stays fixed and running for a good while. Okay, so that's the points. This is why we're going and replacing them, is because these wear out. Let's see, we just want to make sure that the spot where it's going to go is clean and free of rust or corrosion or anything that would inhibit an electrical connection. I'm just going to wipe that. There's some residue in there. Got the new one in a box here. This is, here's part number is 30547A. Oops. There's the new ones. Go ahead and pull this rubber band off. That was easy. And you can see, you can't see. See, it's labeled right there on the part there, 30547A. Come on. I just have to take my word for it. Okay, so it's labeled. This is how the points look when they're brand new out of the box. Okay. And it's reverse removal. This will slide back down into its groove. We're going to want to rotate this against its spring. You got to get that post to sit in the hole. Yeah, there you go. Pops down into a hole. And then we put the screw back in. You don't get a new screw, so you want to make sure you got the proper size screwdriver blade to fit that. And know that it's going into only 2 or 3 threads. And the housing is made out of aluminum, so it's soft. So we don't need a super tight torque setting. I don't want to fully tighten this right now because this point that's held down by the screw is considered our fixed point, and this is how we adjust the gap, is by sliding this back and forth to set that. And that's also why I wanted to set it on the high point right away, because now all I have to do is take my point gap feeler gauge here, and I pulled out an 18, a 20, and a 22 thousandths feeler gauge blades. Because sometimes when I set these, I'll notice that it closes up on me. I think it closes up on me. So I'll set it a couple thousandths larger. I haven't done it in a while, so my memory is a little fuzzy. Or maybe it opens on me. I think it closes though. But you'll notice that these are narrower than your standard feeler gauge. That's because the space to get them in is kind of tight. So this results in a more accurate measurement because you don't have to worry about the blade getting in the way of itself. I'll start with the 20. All these older Tecumseh engines have a point specification of 20 thousandths. So I'm going to start with the 20 thousandths gap. I'm going to put it in there. I'm going to push the point, the movable point up against it. Try to hold it still without moving it or wiggling it. And I'm just going to gently snug that screw down, okay? And yeah, see, it opened up on me a little bit because this already feels loose, okay? So before I even bother to go to check it, I'm going to take my 18 and I'm going to loosen the screw back up. I'm going to put my 18 in here. Okay, I'll push the point up against the 18, not so much that it moves the spring. Okay, and then very carefully without twisting that, I'm going to tighten down this screw. Whoops. snug it up. And now I got a little bit of drag here. I might have done a little bit too much. Okay, and so right now I have about 18 thousandths. Now one of the things that we got to be careful of, and we saw it on the old set that came out, is it wasn't really flat to contact. Sometimes these brackets are bent, sometimes they distort when you go to tighten down the screw. So even on a new set of points, I'm going to take my points file and I'm going to run it in between the points a little bit to create a flat spot and a proper meeting between the two surfaces. And then I will show you how we're going to check to make sure that the points are opening and closing, and recheck the gap, make sure we got a good electrical connection when they're shut. So I'm going to use my screwdriver here. I'm going to pull back on the pivot. I'm going to let the spring tension close on it. And I'm going to just take my points file. I'm going to go up and down a few times. With some tension on it. To create a flat spot between the two surfaces. Theoretically, the two sides of the file are parallel to each other. Okay. We'll recheck the gap to see if that made a difference in the size of my gap. We're at a bit of a loose 18 now. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and try to readjust that closer to 20. If my gap is too small, I'm going to end up with a slightly early spark. And if my gap is too large, I end up with a late spark. Okay, so I need to move that point out of the way. I'll take my 20 thousandths blade, make sure my follower arm here is touching the ramp. Put my 20 in here, push it up against there. And I'm going to just slowly tighten the screw, making sure that I still have tension on my blade. Pull it out, check it there, got a nice little bit of tension there. I'm going to go ahead and roll the engine over one full turn and help let everything settle, and then we'll check it. So, there they look closed. Coming back to our opening ramp here. Sorry, I'm probably blocking you guys' view. About there. Okay. Check the gap again. It's pretty decent 20 thousandths. It's just a little bit of drag. Okay. But I can tell I'm also not having to force the points open. Next thing we need to do is to make sure that they're flat against each other and that they're actually making an electrical connection when they're closed. So I'm going to put it on the closed portion here. When the points are supposed to be closed, I'm going to file it a little bit more. And then I'm going to go get a meter because I forgot to get that out. And show you how to check the points for their electrical connection. Okay, I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. I got a meter set up here. but you guys can't even see. Let's see if we can get that into your view here. How's that? Okay, and so I got my 2 meter leads, and right now it says OL for out of limits. It's set on resistance. I got the continuity beep on, and so when I have a complete electrical path between my 2 probes, I get a beep sound and usually a low reading. Okay, so right now the points should be closed, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put one on the engine block slash points case, and the other one is going to go on that isolated terminal that goes through the plastic fitting here. So right here, so that's my primary wire connection there, and the electrical path goes through the bolt, through this metal spring, to the moving point, to the point, and then to ground or to the case. Okay, so that when my points open, it's going to break that circuit, causing a collapse of the magnetic field, which results in the spark being generated in the secondary windings of the coil. When the points are closed, there should be an electrical connection to ground. So if I put one here and I put one like on the case here, let me see if you guys can see that. Yep, you can see that it touches. Now, if I rotate it to put where the points are open, there shouldn't be continuity. Okay, so now the points should be at full open. If I check again, should not have continuity now. And I do not. Okay, so now I know my points are electrically good. Last thing to do here is to usually take a sheet of paper or cloth. Usually some lint-free paper is really good for this. But I'm going to just take a piece of this blue shop rag. They're relatively lint-free. I'm going to put it in between the points. Let the spring close on it, and I'm just going to pull it out. I got to rotate the crank so it can actually... I'm going to let that, and then that's going to just wipe the points clean to make sure that there's no dust or surface contaminants on the points. Or oils. Things of that nature. Come on. So close it. And I'm just pull that through. Okay. And then I'll go ahead and recheck it just because we're right here. Okay, still got continuity, so that's fantastic. I'll just make sure this is a final tight. Again, it doesn't have to be super tight because there's not much holding it there. And then I'll just do a final point gap check to make sure it's good to go, because the only way to test this and make sure it has spark is to put everything back together. And I don't want to have to come back here, so it's always easier to double check my work than it is to have to tear everything down again. That's a pretty nice 20. It's just a little bit of tension on it. So I know it's not 21, and it's not so tight that it's more like a 19 and a half. And we know that we have continuity. So we know that when it closes, it works. And when it's at its max opening, it also works. Now I got to finish putting the electrical connections together on here. One of them being my stop switch wire, the other one being the new condenser wire, and then this is the coil primary wire. This is the old condenser. Okay. Usually when I do points, make sure you guys can still see. When I do points, I also do the condenser. These are foil and paper wrapped together inside the cylinder. They age and can deteriorate, and they're not that expensive. I think the coil and the condenser together were like $22. So it's not that expensive to go ahead and just make sure it's a brand new condenser with the points, and you'll be good. So what I want to do here is, you can see it's a double crimped fitting is I'm just going to cut this off here because the new condenser already has an eyelet on it, so we'll just stack those together on the stud. There's enough stud length there. Okay. Sometimes the points of condenser come together in packs. Sometimes you have to buy them separately, but usually it's just good practice to go ahead and replace them at the same time. So this was routed through here and put on the stud first. It sits down into a little plastic groove. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and we'll put the points terminal over it. The other thing we got to do is when we route these wires is we have to keep them out of the way of the spinning flywheel that goes over the top. So I want to be careful and thoughtful about how I route my wires in the excess material here. You may have to put a twist in this guy to get it to stay flat. Okay, I'll put that on. Got a washer here that goes on next. Whoops. And then my kill switch wire goes on. And then my 11/32 nut. So we'll get that all started. Remember, it's a tiny little terminal that's mounted in plastic, so it's pretty sensitive to over tightening. We got to try to avoid doing things like that. And I'm going to just double check and make sure I torque that condenser screw to satisfaction. Yeah, that was a smidge on the loose side yet. Again, it's a really small screw into only a couple threads of aluminum, so we want to be gentle with it, but we do also want to make sure that it's tight enough that it's not going to come loose while the engine's running. There's a lot of vibration in these old engines. We get a nut driver, and we'll see if we can't hold these wires in place here. Snug them up. Just want to make sure this wire is not pinched behind this backing plate here. Should be able to move and wiggle freely. Okay. And then my spark plug wire is this other black wire here, and that's able to move freely as well. Alright, let me see if I can get you guys down for a closer look. I'll roll the engine over while you guys watch the points open and close from a different angle. Out of here without dropping you. Oops, sorry for the shaky footage here. Alright, stable. So there's the point gap. There's the ramp right there at the tip of my wrench. Point gap over there. You can see my wiper there. We'll have to put a drop of oil on that and get that back into place. Put my wrench on here, put you guys on a point cap so that right now the points can be open for a little bit. It's going to close. You see we're right about to come up on the ramp here, so they're going to open very shortly. And then there they go, they open. Okay. And if I keep going again, you can see the ramp is about to go away, and they should close very shortly. There you go. Now if I had two more hands, I could hold the meter on there while rotating the wrench and holding the camera, and you can see it all work. That's how you change out the points on these older Tecumseh engines.